What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the Animous. Today we're going to start a new series, which is our tutorial series. So thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to be working on the sdex Gundam Aerial. I picked it up from my local hobby store, so let's just go ahead and open it up and see what it got. In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about nub removal. First thing you guys need to know is that if you are building these kits, you will require some tools, right? So I always recommend, standard nippers there, dual bladed, whatever you want to call them. And then also, I'm a big fan of single bladed nippers. These right here are actually an off-brand one I'm using for this video because I decided to try them out. I got them from my local hobby store there. Fairly cheap too compared to my God hands. Definitely cheaper than those. We're gonna be using the hobby knife, and we're gonna be using our razor. I do have other techniques that I'm going to show you, which will include sanding. Right? A lot of people have asked me, is it better to sand? Is it better to cut? Is it better to use a hobby knife? Should I just use a glass file? I'm going to be very honest with you. I guess it just depends on the application. I use these to buff it out. I do have a balancer too from Gun Primer, but I figured that, just for so everybody can see, not everybody likes ordering all that stuff right off the get-go. So this I got from an actual beauty shop, or it's where they sell like tools and stuff for taking care of your nails. Is a buffer, and then it's got like low sanding grit on each side, or high sanding grit I might say. So you use that to buff the parts. And I also have this. I haven't seen a lot of people use this, right? So this is for, I believe this is Mr. Hobby. This is a Mr. Hobby tool. It is a sort of fabric that takes away the glossiness of the kit. It was very peculiar to me when I started using this, because I could not believe the results, right? So usually when you do your balance, you use your balancer, you get that glossy finish. It looks a little plasticky. I like my flat finish, so unless it's like a metallic color. So of course we'll be using sandpaper, sanding sponges, whatever you want to use. Here I got some the space sponges, and I got some Mr. Hobby sponges. There's a lot of stuff, right? So somebody sent me a message asking, so if you sand the nubs, do you always have to clear coat, top coat your kits? Well, I guess it just depends. If you're trying to get a certain finish, then yes, of course you want to make sure you top coat your kits as much as you can, right? So I don't know how well that's gonna work out with these these sticker sheets right here, but we'll push through it and see where it goes. So let's go. Let me go right ahead and open these up, and then join back with you guys. So we're going to go ahead and jump straight into this small build here for the tutorial series. So we will be using this kit overall, so you will not be seeing this kit being finished today, probably in one of the later episodes while we practice other techniques. So here we go. So we're going to go ahead and start the snipping. So what I like to do is that everybody that's built these already knows that the two snip method is always the recommended one, right? So snip, one snip, knock it down, right? So this is how your parts usually supposed to look like, right? So go to the side. Now there's a few ways that you can take these off, right? There's a few ways. Now the first thing that you could do is that you could try to cut it with your nipper, right? So I do want to give you an example of what would happen if you just use a dual blade, right? Because what's a good example without any mistakes, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it right here using the dual blade, right? Okay, so it doesn't seem that it made the mistake there, but usually what's gonna happen is that, oh, actually it did do it. Let me see if I can get some focus here for the camera. So as you can see right there, it'll leave like a stress mark or an overcut for the actual part itself, right? Now, if you are only using one nipper, or are you using nail clippers, because that seems to be another tool that a lot of people like to use, don't fret. It's not a problem. If this happens to you, it can be fixed, right? So it's not going to look as pretty, but it can be fixed for sure. Now, the other technique that I want to show you is using your hobby knife. So please make sure you practice with these in a controlled environment where you are safe and keep yourself safe at all times. I had somebody that saw me using the hobby knife in another video and asked me, why do I always put the cap back right away? Well, because in the event that you're trying to reach for something and the hobby knife is just sitting there and you reach to it and all of a sudden there you go, now you got to cut that building time is over. Now you got to take care of your finger, right? So just don't do it. All right, um, so the one thing I want to mention is that you can also cut it with your hobby knife. Okay, now I use this technique here where I slightly cut the part and then grind the excess off gently. Just keep grinding it off gently. Now, so there is an issue with doing this as well as any other technique. So you will most likely leave a stress mark, right? Or if you overcut or anything like that. Now this one doesn't look that bad, considering it's going to be a straight build. However, if we were going to paint this kit, we would definitely need to correct that 100%. So we're gonna go ahead and now I'm gonna show you how to correct an issue if you get a stress mark or if you get anything like that. So there's two ways you can do it. My two ways at least. One, you can apply heat to the stress mark. It makes the stress marks go away. I know that it's not a technique that's usually practiced a lot. I use a lot. Clear parts, clear parts, dark color parts, or anything that's not white or gray. No problem at all applying a little bit of heat, get that stress mark out of there, right? The other way that you can do it, you can also go ahead and use your nail. You can use your fingernail to go ahead and scratch that off, right? So the other thing that a lot of people like to use is a single bladed nipper, right? So the only issue that I see with single bladed nippers is that sometimes you will have a surface that's not as even as you might want it to be, right? So so you want to make sure that you try as best as you can to get that surface even. So this one right here doesn't look too bad. So we're going to go ahead and finish off the other one with the single bladed nipper. All right, as you can see, I do have some nubs here on the antennas, V fins, whatever, and then the stress marks here. So the first thing I want to show you is how I would usually I would use my glass file. So what I like to do is that I would lightly glide all right, here we go. Grab the file. You can glide it any side or however you feel most comfortable in. I try to refrain from going, back and forth. I just try to keep it in one direction always. But it just depends on who's building. A lot of people have different techniques, right? So we're going to go ahead and try to remove this one as well. I do have to say that I prefer this method. However, you will encounter parts that you're not going to be able to use this. So you're probably going to end up sanding. For those, definitely recommend sanding sponges. You can mold them however you want. You can turn them however you want. Okay. So now for these areas right here where we have a little bit of stress marks there, so they're barely visible. However, we're still going to go ahead and sand it, right? So what I would recommend, this is another technique that you can use. Sometimes I recommend people to use the 1000 grit. Like I mentioned, I usually try to refrain from going, on a flat surface. I refrain from going back and forth. I usually try to just sand in one direction. If it needs to be corrected, then I'll sand in the other direction, but never back and forth. I don't know. It's just me, right? So this is already good to go. This side is already good to go. We're gonna go ahead and sand this side right here. So a little bit more. All right. So this is how I usually take care of my parts. Usually, two-step method. Use the two-step method with your nippers. You can use a hobby knife to do the second step as well, or you can do a second cut with a single cutter and then clean it up with a hobby knife. Okay, so it's completely up to you. To clean the gates, I prefer using the glass file. However, this is not the only glass file out there. They make others. So if not, then sanding sponges will save your life. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for joining us in the first episode from our tutorial series. If you like this sort of content, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for future content and future videos. And I'll see you all next time.